Today we're looking at the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a very important part of how we decide, arguably, the most important person in the electoral or in the executive branch. The Electoral College is a group of people. They come from every single state in the nation and also Washington, D.C., and they are the ones who actually formally select the president. So these electors are expected to vote for their party's candidates, and they're chosen by popular vote. So when I go into the ballot box and I say, okay, this is who I want for president, that vote is not directly counted. Like, that vote doesn't directly go to the candidate that I choose. So this is kind of an odd system to wrap your head around. Essentially, when I go to the ballot, I am going to choose somebody to choose somebody, kind of. So, I vote for somebody. The popular vote is tallied, so how many people in Illinois voted for that candidate, and then whoever gets more than 50% of the vote is going to be the candidate that gets all of the electoral votes from Illinois. I may have voted for that person, I may have voted for the other person, but it's kind of an all or nothing system. So, if more people, even just one more person in the state of Illinois, vote Democrat, as is usually the case with Illinois, then every single vote, all of the electoral votes in Illinois are going to go to the Democrat candidate. If one more person, even than votes Democrat, votes Republican, then all of Illinois' electoral votes are going to the Republican. And so we have 20 votes, and I'll explain why we have 20 votes in just a minute. But basically, either you get 100% of the electoral votes or you get 0% of the electoral votes in almost every state. How many total votes are there? There's 538 because it's the total number of senators plus the total number of representatives for each state. So in Illinois, we have 18 congressional districts for the House of Representatives, and we have 2 senators. So therefore, we have 20 votes altogether. There's going to be an additional 3 for the District of Columbia. So this is one instance in which Washington, D.C. does get representation. This was not always the case. I think it was like in the 70s or 80s when they made this a thing. But they do get to vote for the president. So it's going to be equal to the smallest state in population. How many votes they have, that's going to be 3 because we are guaranteed 1 representative and we're guaranteed 2 senators, and additional representatives would be given based on population, but it's going to be equal to the smallest state, so it's just 1 and 2, therefore it's 3. So Washington, D.C. has 3 electoral votes. Why is it that the Founding Fathers came up with this system? First of all, it's hard to collect votes back in the day. Imagine that rather than, just clicking on something and we can send messages from one part of the country to another part of the country. Instead, it's going to take at least a few days to get from almost anywhere to anywhere else. So imagine that we vote in Illinois, and then we have to put the results in the pocket of some dude who's going to ride to Washington, D.C. on a horse from Illinois. He's going to need to get there, and he's going to need to have the vote total when he gets there. So, there's a lot of things that might happen to that guy. If you've ever played the game Oregon Trail, there's all kinds of good, 17 and 1800s diseases like dysentery and typhus and stuff like that. There's, maybe the guy could run into Native Americans who don't appreciate him being on what's generally their land or the land that their tribe lives on. Maybe he gets stopped by robbers and they kill him, or they beat him up and they take all his stuff, so then he doesn't have the vote count anymore. Or at the very least, it's going to take several days for him to get there. So this is one reason. It's just an easier system to say, okay, we're going to, have this group of people vote on, what the people voted for in the majority. In addition, the Founding Fathers did not trust us to make good decisions. So they had this Electoral College because, honestly, at the time that it was created, we were not very well educated. A lot of us did not know how to read or write. There was only, a handful of people that were able to vote, but still, even if you're a white man who owns land, you might not be educated. And so, they did not trust us to make good decisions. They decided, okay, we are going to get a group of people that are going to essentially vote on behalf of you guys. And if I didn't make this clear from the first slide, there is an actual thing called the Electoral College. And so when we cast our vote in Illinois, we are essentially telling these 20 people that represent the state of Illinois, this is how I want you to vote. And so if the Democrat candidate gets 50% or more, all of those 20 people are going to vote Democrat. So 20 points are going to go to the Democrat candidate from Illinois. And if Illinois votes Republican majority, then all of Illinois' votes are going to go to the Republican. So, there's actually 20 guys that you write down, okay, I want the Republican candidate or I want the Democrat candidate, based on what the people chose. So it's actually real people that cast these votes officially. The minimum number of votes that you have to win is 270. So if we have 538, half of that is 269. 1 over half of that is going to be 270. So that's how many you have to win. This can happen, if it doesn't have half or more, it wasn't always 270, it wasn't always 538 that were the numbers we were talking about. But, you can, if nobody has that many votes, then the House of Representatives gets to decide. So if everybody has less than half of the votes, then, House of Representatives gets to say, okay, we're making the decision here. This happened twice. So in 1800, they chose Thomas Jefferson over John Adams. In 1824, they chose John Quincy Adams over Andrew Jackson. Especially this 1824 election was viewed as relatively sketchy circumstances. Jackson was kind of the outsider. Adams was kind of the in candidate, because his dad had been president. He's from a rich family. Jackson was seen as kind of an outsider. He wasn't kind of your typical politician, but both of them in both cases ended up being president at one time or another. But these are the two times that officially the House of Representatives chose. So we vote on the second Tuesday in November. That's when every single person in the nation votes. In addition, I should let you know that we talked about for the legislative branch, like the representation of the islands and territories and stuff like that. Like the territories do get to vote for president, but nobody cares. Like, it doesn't count for anything. So a lot of times you'll see on election day, you'll see, all right, and Guam voted for, I think most of the islands voted for Hillary Clinton last time. So, you'll see the news reporting that, okay, and, Clinton won Guam or whatever. But that doesn't actually count for anything. They don't have any electoral votes, so it doesn't really matter. They get to vote, but nobody cares. But anyway, we might meet on the second Tuesday in November. The electors actually meet on the Monday after the second Wednesday in December, so I vote for my candidate in November. The official electors vote for their candidate in December. They send their votes for president and vice president to the president of the Senate, also known as the vice president. And then the president of the Senate opens those in January of the next year and counts them. So that's when technically it's official that we know who the president is going to be. We essentially know there was some people that were trying to get electors to switch allegiances and vote for somebody else in the last election. There was a handful of people, we'll talk about that in a couple minutes, but not enough to actually change anything. It would be very unusual if somebody different was elected based on vote or the electors picking other people, but it could happen, but it probably wouldn't. So January 6th of the next year, so January 6th, 2021 is when we will officially know who the next president is. So we already talked about why. So there's some flaws that people say with the Electoral College. First of all, the person that wins the popular vote might lose the Electoral College vote. That is what happened the last time. That also happened in 2000 with George Bush and Al Gore. Technically, more people in the United States voted for, in both cases, the Democrat candidate, but the Republican candidate won due to the Electoral College. So some people say, all right, well, it's not fair if more people said that they wanted this specific candidate and that candidate doesn't win. That doesn't make any sense. In addition, nothing requires that the electors vote for the people their state chooses. There were, I believe, 6 or 7 faithless electors in the last election. There was at least 1 or 2 people that were supposed to vote for Hillary who voted. I think there was 1 or 2 people that voted for Bernie. There were 2 people that were supposed to vote for Hillary. I think both of them were from Washington, who actually voted for Colin Powell. Colin Powell is the former Secretary of State under the Bush administration. I think Secretary of Defense. Not 100% sure off the top of my head. But anyway, he got 2 votes that were supposed to go to Hillary Clinton. One of the interesting things is that he is a Republican. So that was kind of unusual. There was a Native American activist, Faith Spotted Eagle, that got some votes. John Kasich got some votes that were supposed to go to Trump. John Kasich was another person who ran as a Republican. He was the last person to drop out in the primary, and he got some votes that were supposed to go to Trump. And then I think there was 1 or 2 people who voted for Ron Paul. He's the father of Senator Rand Paul, and he's most known for being a libertarian, having those kind of ideals, but I think he's always, at least the last few times that he's run. I think he's run under the Republican mantle. But anyway, these handful of faithless electors show that the people that we vote for are not necessarily the people that the Electoral College votes for. And in a lot of states, there's no penalty for voting for somebody that you're not told to vote for. The House may decide the winner anyway, so that kind of nullifies most of our votes. And nobody votes for these electors. So they may not be any more educated than us, even though that's the idea of the Electoral College. They may not actually be any smarter or more well-informed than we are. And so I'm not 100% sure how electors are chosen in most states. I think it's usually the party that chooses. On a list of electors for the entire United States for the last election, I only recognize 2 names. Both of those were in New York. New York's votes went to Hillary Clinton. The 2 that I recognize their names were Bill Clinton was one of them, and one of the Cuomos. I don't remember if it was Andrew Cuomo. He's the governor of New York. He's been in the news a lot lately. Or Chris Cuomo, his brother, who is like a pundit, somebody that talks about politics on TV. I think he usually works for MSNBC or CNN. I don't remember. But anyway, so the electors may or may not be more qualified than the rest of us are. I'm going to show you some maps. So all of these maps show you something different about the way that America voted in the last election, and kind of what that means. So this is the official map. Also, I highly suggest this website, 270 to Win, if you are interested in that type of thing. It'll show you the projections for who they expect to win. It'll show you also how they've won historically, and you can also mess with the map. So a lot of times on election night, I will be sitting at this website just kind of messing with the map, I think this state's going to go to this person, I think this state's going to go to this person, I would expect it to go this way, but it might not go this way, and you can kind of play with it to kind of predict it yourself. So if you're a big nerd, I highly suggest that. But this is the official Electoral College map. This does not include the faithless electors. This is the official tally. And you can see that there's a lot of red, and there's blue mostly on the east and the west coast, with a few states thrown in here and there. I do want to talk about Maine, because Maine's got little stripes. So Maine and Nebraska are currently the only states that can vote for more than one person in the Electoral College. So, their votes get split up by proportion. Now, if you look at Nebraska, all of Nebraska's votes went to Trump, and that's also a possibility for these 2 states. In Maine, it was split up differently. So, in Maine, I believe it's the winner of the Electoral College, or the winner of the state gets 2 votes, and then the other 2 votes are split up based on proportion. I believe Nebraska works the same way. There's lots of different possibilities, but those are the ones that are actually in use today. Every other state, all of their votes go to one candidate, no matter what the proportion was. Whether it was 100% of the people in that state voted for that candidate, or whether it was just 50% plus one person voted for that candidate. So there's a lot of red, especially in the South, especially in the Midwest. So this is by county. Again, we've got a lot of red here. This shows who won the county. So there's no shades here. It's just, did 50% or more win this county? of one person, that's who we show it up as. For the most part, the counties that you see are going to be where there are relatively sizable cities. If you look at in Missouri, the three counties are going to be Jackson County, that's where Kansas City is. It's going to be Boone County, which is where Columbia is, and it's going to be St. Louis County, where St. Louis is. Could be St. Peters County. I think it's St. Louis County, though. And so the rest of the state is red. It is important to note, though, that a lot of the population in Missouri lies in those counties. Same as if you look at Illinois, you're going to have blue counties where, Peoria is, East St. Louis, around Chicago, that type of thing. So, that's what that looks like. But, really, not all of the elections can boil down to ultimately, okay, this is a red county and this is a blue county, because it's not always that cut and dry. There are people in every county that vote different ways. So even though Adams County, our county that we live in right now, is a primarily Republican county, there are Democrats who vote here. If you look at Jackson County, Missouri, where Kansas City is, there are Republicans who vote there. It's not just Democrats. Same with Cook County for Illinois. The vast majority is Democrats, but there are Republicans who vote there. So this shows the strength of, the support for the party. I don't exactly know why Alaska is not colored in on this map, but for everywhere else, it's going to show a darker red if it was more a heavily Trump county, a darker blue if it was a more heavily Clinton county, or a lighter color. It looks like all of the counties are either some shade of red or blue. There's no white shade that it's pretty much 50-50. But again, this shows how, it is not just 100% of people in one place voting for the same candidate, even though that may be what we expect historically. Here is a dot map, and this shows us something completely different. So one dot represents one vote in this. So you're going to see a lot of blue, especially concentrated in a lot of areas. That's because people in cities tend to vote Democrat. And so especially next to New York, the whole New York area, honestly, the whole northeastern coast looks pretty solid blue. We look in California, most of the coast in California looks pretty solid blue. So if we go back to this map when we have, or even this one, this shows us, again, what did that county vote for. But this map shows us how much power each of those counties has. Because if you look in, let me see if I can zoom in. It may just, I can zoom in. Cool. If you look up here, in North Dakota and Montana and that type of thing, there's a lot of white because there's not a whole lot of people that live there. So when you look at a map like this one, or even this one, it's somewhat misleading in terms of how much power those counties actually have. If you look at in our area, so we would be about right in the center-ish there, there's going to be a lot of red dots clustered around each other, because even though people in cities, in bigger cities, tend to vote Democrat, you still have population centers who vote Republican primarily. There's some down here in Texas, kind of outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You've got up here in, that's probably lower Minnesota, kind of northern Iowa, that type of thing. So this shows essentially how much power people have, how much of the vote actually went like specifically to each candidate. This is the partisan percentage map. Again, this is going to be kind of like the one I showed you with the different shades of red and the different shades of blue. This is going to be the same kind of deal, where it's going to be more purple if it's more bipartisan. I think this is a really important map because ultimately we have a lot more similarities than we do differences. And it's important to remember that there's people of both parties and people of no party in every place in the United States. This is the vote margin. So this is the amount by which a place leaned one way or another. So you've got some very, very, very solid blue counties down in southern Texas. Cook County is unsurprisingly very solid blue. You've got Adams County that's pretty solid red. It's not quite as solid red as some of like this county over there and some of them over here in Arizona and Utah, but it's gonna be, Republican by a decent margin. And so if a county is white, that means that it's going to be relatively close to 50-50. Or I'm sorry, it's going to be that there's fewer people that voted there. If it's gray, it's going to be closer to 50-50. If it's blue, it's going to be, this is a population center, and it's Democrat, or if it's solid red, then it's Republican. So this again kind of combines that like purpley looking map and also the one with the dots for each person. Oops. This is for 2012. Again, I like this map because it shows us how much bipartisan we actually are. Again, this is for 2012, so this is going to be Obama's second term. I did not find one for 2016, but again, most counties are shades of purple rather than just red or just blue. But I think this is probably the most important map that I will show you. So if did not vote had been a candidate, did not vote would be our president. We would have a total anarchy, or some guy whose parents named him did not vote, which would be just as weird. But this shows that more people who were able to vote did not vote than that voted. And so I guess this is the most important thing that I can tell you is no matter how you feel about the Electoral College or about the candidates or whatever, when you are able to vote, it's really important to do so, because otherwise, in my opinion, if you don't vote and you can vote, then you have no right to complain about how the election results came out. If you voted for somebody, even if that person wins and they don't do what you expected to do, it's politics, that happens a lot. It's still important for you to make the best educated decision that you can and actually go and vote. And if you are unable to vote for some reason, you're going to be out of town, you have gone to college, you can still do, rather than re-registering or completely changing your plans so you're in town, you can still register to vote by mail. That's what I did the first year that I lived in Quincy. I voted in the Missouri primary, so I had my ballot sent to me, and then I sent it back. And so, it's important to take the opportunity to vote and take the opportunity to say, all right, I really like this candidate. I think they're going to do really great things, and so I'm going to vote for them. Or even, I don't necessarily like either of the candidates, but I think this one is going to be the one that is going to do the best. I find this really important because it shows um, how little people participate and how many people don't vote. And not only is it our right, but I view it as our responsibility. So if you learn nothing else from me, please go vote. And don't just vote in presidential elections. Of course, I'm focusing on that right now. But vote for your down ballot elections. Vote for sheriff, governor, coroner. Vote for your alderman. Arguably, your votes for mayor and for alderman have the most impact on your daily life because, it makes a difference on how people vote on city ordinances, like the ordinance to either close the fire station or keep it open that came up a few years ago. Vote on things like the tax increase that they proposed in the last election. Decide, okay, yeah, I think that this is going to be beneficial to our schools, or decide, okay, this isn't going to be beneficial, you're going to need to find the money somewhere else or whatever, but just make sure that you participate. So anyway, I'm going to put a couple other videos in your folder along with an assignment. As always, let me know if you have questions. I'm happy to try to clear this up more. I know this is kind of a weird concept. It's probably one of the weirder concepts in American politics is the Electoral College. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Lordy.